Hello, critical thinkers. Hope all is well. Hopefully, everyone is having a good night tonight. Tonight, we got some very special topics. Tonight, we're going over some stories in regards to Kathy Hochul and her excitement in regards to uh, dealing with prison reform. Also, in addition, we're going to be going over some Attica news for everyone who loves hearing about Attica Correctional Facility. We have some news regarding hospitalizations, both of staff, corrections officers, and incarcerated individuals who had to be hospitalized as well. Also, I'm going to be going over today the Kathy Hochul executive order in which she basically says correction officers can't work for other state departments. But the first thing I want to do is say hi to everyone who just came into the chat. If you have a second, please write down where you're from, your city or your state. I love to see where people are watching from. I see we have our first ever critical thinker member who joined, BJ Webbs. And BJ Webbs, I have to give you a big shout out for supporting the channel, for commenting on all the videos. I truly, 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 truly appreciate it. Thank you, BJ Webbs. Thank you immensely. It definitely means a lot to me. I see we have from North Carolina, Donna Torres. Donna Torres, welcome. Welcome to the chat. Welcome to the channel. I believe I've seen you here before. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Who else is in the chat? Who else wants to put down where they're from, their city and state? So in the interim, I had posed a question to everybody, and I think this is truly a very important question. So, as everyone knows, or as everyone may not know, Kathy Hochul signed an executive order basically barring those correction officers who did not return to work from the strike employment from any New York State agency or department. So, again, Kathy Hochul signed an executive order barring those correction officers who did not return from the strike and barred them from future employment. Oh, real quick, I see we have La Flaca Santiago from Staten Island, New York. Hello, La Flaca. Hopefully you're doing well. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being here. We have Sunset from New York. Sunset, I believe I've seen the name before. Thank you for coming again. I really appreciate that. Donna said, um, by the way, I'm originally from New York. Yeah. I think a lot of people have left New York. I myself, I'm in Florida. I consider myself a refugee of New Jersey. So I've been in Florida for about 3 years myself. Let me pull up again. We have La Flaca Santiago from Staten Island, New York. We have Sunset from New York. And then I have to go back and give a big shout out to BJ Webbs, our first ever channel member who joined a couple weeks ago last week. Really appreciate it. Thank you again, BJ Webbs. Let's see who else we have in the chat tonight. Well, we have Donna saying, I'm a transplant, LOL. Yeah. Basically, in Florida, you have I believe it's about 1,000 families a day relocating to Florida. So you have a lot of people leaving New York, California, New Jersey, like myself. So I'm in beautiful, beautiful Naples, Florida. So I actually posed a question tonight. Oh, we have a good evening from RO Plo. RO Plo, welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for coming on. So I have a question for everyone here tonight. And by the way, if anybody wants to come up before we get to the actual news stories tonight, if anybody wants to come up and help answer this question, I'm going to put a link in the chat right now. The only thing that I do say is that if you do want to come on, that that you have a workable camera, you show your face, and you have no music in the background, no Bebe's kids, loud, so that we'll be able to hear you and converse back and forth. We have Tyrone saying, "Peace by all means." They broke their oath of office. Oh, going to the question of whether correction officers who striked, whether they should be terminated from their employment. So we have Tyrone. Peace, Tyrone. Welcome. Really appreciate you being here. Tyrone says, "Peace by all means. They broke their oath of office to uphold, serve, and protect. They committed what is tantamount to treason. Treason. No one is above the law. President Trump was prosecuted." Okay. So we have a very strong opinion that these correctional officers um, should not be allowed to work for any state agency. And then also going back to BJ Webbs, she said, quote, "I feel they should be because they abandoned their duties, their responsibilities, the people they were responsible for. They had multiple chances and chose to not go to work. They should be banned." Uh, how many of you think that they should be banned? Do me a favor, type "banned" in the chat. If you truly feel they should be banned, they should be barred from employment from New York State in any capacity. Write "banned" in the comments here in the chat. That'd be great. Oh, so Donna said "banned." Is there anyone else who has strong opinions? Oh, Sunset says "banned." Okay. Gotcha. Okay. So I am going to offer up a difference of opinion because that's the kind of person who I am. But we have La Flaca Santiago saying "banned" as well. Okay. Okay. So I am going to offer up a difference of opinion, and if anyone wants to come on and chat with me about it, I'll be more than happy to. I already put the link in the description here. I'll put it in one more time if somebody wants to come on and chit chat before we get to the uh, the news for today. Okay. So BJ Webbs says ban definitely. Ban definitely. So that's an even stronger sentiment there. So from what I'm reading here, I would think mostly everyone believes they should be banned. Okay. So I'm going to offer up my opinion to you. And my opinion is this: I personally don't believe that these correction officers should be banned. So hold on a second. So before you start throwing virtual tomatoes at me, okay, I want to give you my reasons why. And you guys let me know if this makes sense. It makes sense to you, or you think I'm full of ish. You think it's BS. I will tell you why. The reason why I believe that the correction officers, although I do believe they did a bad thing, I do believe abandoning their jobs, abandoning their post, not working, it did put the lives of incarcerated individuals at risk. It did put the lives of staff members at risk. And then it also put the lives of those correctional officers who stayed behind. It put their lives at risk as well. So I would say that's a very serious thing. But what I say is this: I don't believe they should be banned because I believe it should be the employer who makes that decision whether they want to ban that former correction officer or not. So let's say I'm the head of a state bureau. I think it should be my decision to make whether I want to hire that person or not. So that's my personal belief, is that it should be the decision of the employer. Should the employer know whether they participated in the strike? 1,000%, 100%. I do believe that information should be shared. And in a few minutes, we'll go over Kathy Hochul's executive order in which she lays out, some plans for communication about that. So my belief is that I don't necessarily think they should be banned for future employment with the state of New York. I think the employer, the head of that department, should be able to make that determination on their own. So that's my personal belief. I think everyone knows I'm not an advocate for correction officers per se. I'm not. I think there's a major culture of corruption there that has to be addressed. But in heart, I'm really a libertarian, and I do believe people should make these decisions. They should make these hiring decisions. So that's just my feedback. I want to go to a couple of the comments here real quick. We have Variant with I think that's a thumbs up. My vision is bad in my old age. My apologies. I think that's a clap. Variant, thank you so much for being on tonight. Really appreciate it. We have Chris Milky saying good evening. Good evening, Chris. Hopefully you're doing well. Hopefully you have a nice cup of coffee with you, like me. So for me, coffee doesn't have any effect on me at all, to be honest with you. I'm more of a creature of habit. I drink coffee. It doesn't really do anything for me at this point. But hey, I'm here. I have to be energized. So uh, BJ Webbs, I'm in northern New York. Northern New York. Okay. Welcome again, BJ. Welcome. Welcome. Okay. All right. Okay. We have a comment, RO Plo. Correctional officers should be required to have more than a high school diploma, given the complexity of their role. I agree with you 1,000%. I do think the standards are low for correctional officers. I do believe there needs to be, um, whether it be a bachelor's degree in psychology or some sort of specialized training. Like, for example, many, many, many years ago, I used to be a director of direct care, and we had, boys in crisis. We had boys with mental health issues, and I used to be what they call a TCI trainer, which is therapeutic crisis intervention. I would train my staff on how to intervene when you have a kid in crisis, when you have a kid who is having some sort of breakdown or an episode, identifying what the kid's going through and trying to de-escalate them. So a lot of what I trained my staff in, this is over 20 something years ago, was in de-escalation and also physical restraint. So I would teach my staff physical restraint, not to hurt the kid. It was called self-protection. Self-protection. So I agree with you 1,000%. The It should be more than just a high school diploma. And then also the starting salary for correction officers. I'm not sure what it is right now. I believe back in 2023, I could be wrong. I believe it was 63,000 starting salary, and this is in like upstate New York areas where the cost of living is cheaper. We have Chris Milky saying mental health and psychology degree. Yeah, so I think Chris, I think we're on the same page with that. Officers need to have some level of interpersonal skills, knowing how to de-escalate someone, knowing how to talk, knowing how to use your words first. I think the same thing with police officers. You have to have a certain skill level of de-escalation to deal with the public, or else you're going to be in, you'll have a very hard time. Variant says they need an IQ test and a lie detector test to make sure they aren't sexual predator psychopaths. Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Lie detectors, I don't know how reliable those are, but hey, if there's anything that's going to help to sort out, whether it be a personality profile that's done, trying to eliminate the psychopaths and those individuals who want to prey on the incarcerated. It's very similar to back when I used to work in direct social services. You have people that would work in group homes and work with youth to gain access to children because they're predators. So I do believe there's a percentage of correctional officers that are predators, that are bullies, that are sociopaths, and we see this through the behavior. We see this through the Robert Brooks video. We see this through all these other cases that I've tried to present to you, and mind you, I don't have a whole lot of time, or else I probably would be producing 3 to 5 videos a day with stories of those who are incarcerated that have been abused, mistreated, and just the stories that I keep on hearing and the emails that I get. It's crazy. It's crazy. It's crazy. Variant says absolutely. Okay. All right, I'm going to offer one last final invite if somebody wants to come on and give me their opinion on whether correctional officers should be terminated. I'm sorry, whether they should be banned from state employment, and if you have any feedback about the standards that apply for correctional officers, feel free to share that as well. So I'm just going to go ahead now and jump to the article I want to share with you today. This article was actually brought to me. I think one thing that's good is that most of you email me, you send me articles, you send me notes, you post information, and I thank you for everyone who sent me a link, sent me an article, sent me the name of someone incarcerated who needs assistance. I really do appreciate that because my eyes and ears can't be everywhere, so I really do appreciate that. Oh, by the way, we got R.O. Plo. I've been following you from Ontario, Canada since the Robert Brooks murder. This injustice is not only happening in your backyard, it's about a position of power. Absolutely. Um, there's a saying, I believe it goes, absolute power corrupts absolutely. So when you have the culture of corruption in the New York State Department of Corrections, and you have what would be crimes on the outside, they occur on the inside, and there are no consequences. DAs refuse to prosecute murders. They refuse to prosecute beatings with evidence, with medical reports. It's it's one of the biggest travesties of justice. It's injustice that one could imagine. Um, so, RO Plo, thank you for following and from Ontario, Canada. I really appreciate that. I'm not sure what the correctional system is like in Canada and whether Canadians have the same issues that we have here in the United States of America. So I'm going to go ahead and jump to this article. Okay. So this article is from Spectrum News One. Hochul excited about redoing our prison system post-strike as advocates fume over halt program suspension. So for those of you um, who saw the thumbnail of this live stream, basically I had put excited in quotation marks because in my opinion, I really don't think Governor Hochul is excited about redoing our prison system, about reform. So that's just a little bit of sarcasm in case people did not see that. Let me go back to the article real quick. So, okay, Governor Kathy Hochul said Tuesday that she is excited about efforts which she described as redoing our prison system in the wake of a 3-week illegal strike by correction officers across the state. The governor's response to the strike may have ultimately sent 75% of officers back to work after days of back and forth. But it has infuriated advocates for the HALT Act, as certain aspects of the law, which limits the use of solitary confinement and replaces aspects of it with rehabilitative programming, remain on a 90-day suspension. The governor blamed that suspension in part on the 25% of officers who refused to return. Just a quick comment, really quick, about the HALT Act, because from my research and my understanding, you know, it has not been fully implemented. I hear that all the time. I hear that there are many violations that occur in state prisons in terms of having people in solitary confinement for longer periods of time. I do believe the Correctional Association, they've done some work on this. They've produced some very good, articles about this that speak about um, the the misuse of solitary confinement and SHU, and also what we're seeing, if you haven't been following the channel, is that you see patterns, and you see patterns of people who are incarcerated, who get into altercations with correctional staff. They get frisked, they get assaulted. You hear, stop resisting. They get the crap beaten out of them, and then they get thrown into solitary confinement, they get thrown into the SHU, which I would think is probably a way of isolating that individual from getting medical treatment and from communicating about the abuse. And then they have a charge slapped on them for assaulting a corrections officer. So it has a triple whammy there, a triple whammy. Okay, back to the article. Quote, that has unfortunately been suspended because I am now down not just the original 2,000 correction officers, but we have an additional 2,000, she said, referring to existing staffing issues that fueled the strike. I'm going to keep the National Guard there for a while, but I want to rethink the whole system. So, in terms of what exactly she means by rethinking the whole system, I don't know. I don't believe as of yet she's provided any specifics on that. If anyone has any specifics on what Governor Hochul's, um, process is going to be, what innovation is going to be there, how it's going to be reformed, please let me know, because at the moment, all we have is pillow talk. That's all we have. Back to the article. Ending halt was a primary demand of the strikers because of the unsafe conditions that they say are created by limiting solitary confinement. But in reality, the programming pause had more to do with addressing staffing issues than those concerns. As Hochul spoke across town, advocates and several Democratic lawmakers gathered at the state capitol to express their frustration with the governor over the suspension. So obviously, you will have advocates, people who were advocating for the HALT Act to be in place and not to be suspended. They're going to be pissed off. A lot of people are pissed off about that. Back to the article. The Department of Corrections can double down all they want on suspensions on breaking the law, said Jerome Wright, co-director of the HALT Solitary campaign. But HALT is the law, and that's what we want to follow. Beyond the 90-day pause, the state also agreed to the possibility of further suspension when staffing drops below a certain level, and a committee to study aspects of the law before making recommendations to the legislator. So very quickly, I had done a video back when the strike, quote unquote, officially ended. I know we had multiple stops, but the last time and the conditions in terms of what was offered to those striking officers, in part was the formation of a committee comprised of delegates from each correctional facility in each region to evaluate the HALT the HALT program, and then there's going to be also instituted was the full suspension of HALT when staffing levels were at a critical rate. Offhand, I forgot the exact terminology that was used, so my apologies for that. But once there's a critical staffing level, fall under, I believe it's 70%, then there's the HALT Act is suspended temporarily. So let's go back to the article. Well, it'd be helpful if I bring up the article for you to see. My apologies. Okay. Advocates have accused the governor of giving up on elements of a law that they say wasn't fully implemented in the first place, as a 2022 Inspector General report found. State General, State Senator Julia Salazar told Spectrum News One that while she understands the current staffing situation post strike makes transporting individuals to and from programming a challenge, the fact that the situation in docks facilities has deteriorated to such a degree underscores the need for expanded oversight. So that's one word you will see a lot when people are talking about reform, oversight, oversight, oversight. The governor and both houses have included language expand oversight through the New York State Commission of Correction in their budget proposals. Quote, all of this together is very important for us to monitor conditions in the facilities, make sure all components of the HALT Solitary Confinement Act are implemented despite the staffing challenges, she said. Advocates also insisted that the governor and DOCS Commissioner Dan Marchicello don't have the authority to suspend HALT programming. Salazar indicated that while the commissioner and the executive do have the authority to suspend portions of HALT under emergency situations, she isn't convinced that proper protocols have been followed. It needs to be documented, it needs to be justified. And I don't think we are adequately seeing that right now, but that just underscores the importance of oversight, she says. On Tuesday, the governor affirmed her long term commitment to the programming aspects of HALT as they remain on hold while she undertakes a massive hiring effort. Just very quickly about this massive hiring effort, it's going to be very challenging hiring correctional officers now with the climate, with the results of the strike, the Robert Brooks, murder, and just the reputation that's been tarnished by corrections. But this reputation has been it's not new. This has been going on for many, 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 many years. We've had these murders, we've had these beatings for those individuals who are incarcerated. So I think now it's coming to light. Now it's becoming more part of mainstream media. You see NBC News Force or Wallace covering, Messiah Nantry covering Christopher Giles. So these abuses are coming more and more to light. So that's definitely a good thing. Let me jump back to the article. Um, okay, here we are. It's important to me that people have the opportunity while they are there to emerge from this incarceration with more skills or as an individual who is less likely to commit crimes again, she said. Um, so yeah, our prison system doesn't really focus on rehabilitation. It just focuses on punishment and on isolation. And speaking of that, we have a comment from Variant who says, "Did you ever look at the Norway prison system?" I have not looked at the Norway prison system yet, but I hear it's definitely outside of the norm of what we do here in the U.S. Let me jump to another comment. Also take into consideration how many of the remaining COs are reaching that retirement period and are preparing to leave the position. Yeah, that's also a big thing as well. Uh, they're definitely going to have staffing shortages. I actually did a video sometime last week in reference to Kathy Hochul saying she was shutting down five prisons. 2,000 officers were terminated. So this the strike has an effect. There's consequences to the strike. RO Plo says, I'm still upset with Kathy Hochul for allowing this to happen to so many before doing something about it. Consequences needs to start at the top. I agree with you 100%. We, we have a saying in the management world, in the world of just companies, and it goes like this: the the fish stinks from the head down, right? So that means whoever's your leadership, whoever your leader is, they set the culture of the organization. Unfortunately, the doc's culture is so far decrepit and corrupt and sinister. Like, how do you correct such a corrupt system? I don't know. I really don't know, but that's a whole other conversation. At the same time, she also touted concessions to the correction officers in a post-strike era, including efforts to reduce contraband reaching facilities through the mail, reach as part of the deal that sent striking officers back to work. We're going to bring on a separate contractor to actually look at this, not to read the mail, but if there's something illegal, send it back, she said. The governor has proposed further reforms to the prison system through the state budget, including closing up five more facilities and consolidating incarcerated individuals and mandating that body cams be worn at all times within facilities. This should be a given. This should be a given that all correction officers should be wearing, body worn cameras at all times, at all times. But to be honest with you, this is all great and dandy. You can have, regulations that say correction officers need to wear body worn cameras. And the Robin Brooks murder, what happened? There were body worn cameras there. But guess what? So most of them did not have their body worn cameras on. And the footage that we have, those officers believe that their camera was actually off. And the problem is there are no consequences. There are no consequences for poor behavior, none whatsoever. It's virtually impossible to terminate a New York State correction officer. And I think this is why, this attracts a certain kind of person to that role. That's why. Let's go back to the article. Okay. Um, okay. The governor proposed further reforms to the prison system through the state budget, including closing up to five more facilities and consolidating incarcerated individuals and mandating that body cams be worn at all times within facilities. The Senate and Assembly have adopted variations of those proposals in their one House budgets. Through the Assembly limited the governor to three facilities in addition to two last year. Hochul also proposed expanding programs that contribute to earned merit time, which the Senate adopted but the Assembly did not. It comes as Republican lawmakers who have stood by striking officers in their request to repeal HALT sent a letter to the governor requesting that she rescind an executive order barring those who were terminated from state jobs and making it harder for them to get local ones. So this was the question I posed to everyone earlier in terms of whether they should be barred or not. And what we'll do after this article, we'll take a look at the executive order and see exactly what it has to say. Next paragraph. If any organization had done what she has done to blacklist employees, particularly employees who were treated poorly, they would be met with hellfire from the Department of Labor. But instead, it's okay because Kathy Hochul did it, said State Senator George Bornello. So, I am an individual. I have to call, balls and strikes, and I have to be honest. Like, there's one thing that Kathy Hochul did, that Daniel Marchicello did, I did not approve of. There was a forcing officers to go back to work who were on paid family leave, who were on Family and Medical Leave Act. So, Family Medical Leave Act, for those of you not affiliated who don't know HR or don't know what this means, it basically allows an employee of an organization up to 12 weeks of unpaid medical leave, whether it be to care for a loved one, to care for themselves, or for the birth of a child or adoption, right? So Daniel Marchicello, in all of his splendor and glory and knowledge, forced correction officers to come back to work, or else they would face possible termination. And you had correction officers come back to work who were obviously not fit to return to work. So I do not agree with that. I do have to call that, honestly. So I do think there are some officers who were forced to go back to work who should not have been forced to go back to work, and people who were out on approvable medical leave should not have been harassed to come back to work because of a staff shortage. But that's how I feel about that. Okay, the governor clarified that certain aspects of that executive order having to do with local jobs expired after 30 days, that she encouraged local governments to keep in mind the illegal nature of the strike. So, this piece here, to be honest with you, I did read the executive order. I did not see exactly where it said that certain aspects of local jobs expire after 30 days, that they could be hired. But you and I will go through the executive order together and take a look at it. Okay, quote, they're only in effect until April 9th. The governor said of the restrictions on local hiring. If these people want to go work for law enforcement, that's their prerogative. But I would remind everybody, I'd be very cautious because these individuals had a responsibility to protect the public and the incarcerated population, and they walked off the job for 22 days, many of them. That's the end of the article. So, just to be clear for everyone, just to be clear, uh, the strike was a violation of the Taylor Law. It's illegal for for state employees to strike. It's illegal. It's a violation of the Taylor Law. So, I mean, at this point, there you have it. That's the article. This is what Kathy Hochul is saying. We have a comment. We have a location. Richard Seller, welcome, welcome, and he is watching from Lion Falls, New York. Lion Falls, New York. Welcome, 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 and thank you for being here. And for anyone who just came on the chat, who just came on the live stream, we just finished going over an article that spoke about Kathy Hochul's excitement about prison reform. I'm just getting giggles and, just thinking about her excitement for prison reform because obviously it's fake. There's no excitement. So, Richard, thank you for coming and thank you for being here. Again, I'm going to put, if somebody wants to come on and chit chat with me, the link is in there, is in the chat. I'm gonna copy that and put it back in there one last time. If anybody wants to come in and give me their feedback on whether you think correction officers should be barred from state employment, and then if you want to talk about the standards, like are the standards for correction officers low? Are they low? If they are low, what should they be? What should be in place for someone to be hired as a correction officer? Because as of now, I believe it's just high school diploma. So anyway, what I want to do next is I do want to actually read portions of the executive order from Kathy Hochul. So for those of you who are here for the first time to Critical Conversations HR, welcome. in my videos and on my live streams, I always pledge to go a little bit deeper than just what the mainstream media is telling you. So I think I want to share my research with you. I want to share my sources. I want us to read these articles together and also go over some documentation. So I'm going to share the executive order with you. We will go over it together. We will see what all the hoopla is about and see what Kathy Hochul put down in writing. Okay. Oh, we have La Flaca Santiago saying Miss Hochul should know that the officers who went back to work returned angry, treating inmates like garbage. I have an inmate loved one in one of those facility, so nothing changes. Yeah, I'm hearing that as well. You know, some of these officers came back even angrier than before. So, you know, we all pray for, you know, those individuals who are incarcerated. We pray for their safety, pray for their protection, we pray for their rehabilitation. Um, so we have another comment. Roplo, they should have formal education in areas such as criminal justice, psychology, or social work. Proper education equips them with the skills needed to handle high stress situations with understanding. Yeah, I agree with you 100%, Roplo. That's it's difficult to have restraint. And I can tell you as a man and as someone who used to have severe anger issues, right? Um, it's definitely a skill you have to master restraint, or else it definitely gets you in trouble. Um, we have Michelle. I think Michelle, I think you might be a first time watcher. Thank you for coming. If not, welcome back. Michelle says, I have a loved one in as well. No changes. Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that. I'm really sorry to hear that. Um, we got a correction I said equips them with the skills. We have variant saying, I'm sorry to hear that, La Flaca. So, you know, for anyone out there who has a loved one who's incarcerated, you know, there are support groups out there. There's a bunch of Facebook groups. If anybody wants to put, you know, in the chat a support group that you're a part of, you want to make reference to, by all means do that. Because sometimes it's not just the incarcerated person who is doing time behind bars; it's also the family members and also the children as well. Also the children. So thank you, La Flaca. Okay. All right. So I want to jump to the executive order. I'm going to put that up and let's see exactly what Governor Hochul had put down in her executive order. Okay. Give me 1 second. Okay. All right. So we will take a look at the executive order. I'm having a little brief technical issue. Give me 1 second as this clears up. In the meantime, talks amongst yourselves. Hold on. Let's see if I can pull this up for everybody. Okay. I think I'm back. Here we go. Okay. So for everyone out there, oh, we have another comment. La Flaca Santiago at Variant. Thanks, sweetheart. Okay. So this fancy, smanchy looking document, it kind of looks like it came from the 1800s. This is the executive order number 47.3, which is from the New York State Governor Kathy Hochul. So I don't think we need to read everything. I think we'll go over the very meaty parts of it just to give you an idea of what she put in her executive order. So, declaring a disaster emergency in the state of New York and ordering into active service the New York National Guard to assist authorities in guaranteeing public property at various correctional facilities. Whereas on February 19th, 2025, I issued Executive Order 47 declaring a state disaster emergency in the state of New York arising from an illegal and unlawful strike by correction officers that began on February 17th. Whereas New York State Civil Service Law, Section 210, known as the Taylor Law, strictly prohibits strikes by public employees and deems any such strike illegal. This prohibition safeguards the continuity of vital public services and upholds public trust in government operations. Those correction officers participating in this strike are willfully violating New York state law, as well as a temporary restraining order of the Supreme Court of the state of New York issued on February 19th, 2025. Whereas New York State is committed to the fair and merit-based hiring of public employees and to ensuring that all individuals appointed to state service uphold the law and their oath of public service. Individuals participating in illegal strikes have willfully violated the Taylor Law and an order of the Supreme Court of the state of New York by engaging in misconduct that undermines the public trust, demonstrates disregard for the law, disrupts public services, and is inconsistent with suitability for public service roles. And whereas it is therefore necessary to establish a state policy barring the hiring of individuals participating in this illegal and unlawful strike and recommending their separation from state service to be reported as a removal for cause, consistent with state law and applicable regulations. So here is where she puts down specifically uh, the policy barring those individuals from state employment. Let's continue on. Now, therefore, I, Kathy Hochul, by virtue of the authority vested in me by the Constitution and laws of the state of New York, do hereby direct as follows. The Department of Corrections and Community Supervision shall, upon the separation of any employee, immediately investigate such employee's involvement in the illegal and unlawful strike pursuant to Executive Law 845 2B and 9 NYCRR 6056, promptly report to the New York State Central Registry of Police and Peace Officers maintained by the Division of Criminal Justice Services the separation from service of any individual employed by the Department of Corrections and Community Supervision as a peace officer who's found to have participated in the illegal and unlawful strike as a removal for cause. Report any employee who is found to have participated in the illegal and unlawful strike to the Office of Employee Relations. So here we have Kathy Hochul saying, Department of Corrections, this is what you shall do. You will notify the Office of Employee Relations, any individuals who participated in the strike. So there's a sort of like a mandated reporter to alert the Office of Employee Relations. Continuing on, all New York State agencies shall, as a part of their process to determine if an applicant is eligible to be hired, determine whether an applicant was previously employed by the Department of Corrections and Community Supervision, and therefore separated from such employment in connection with such applicant's participation in the illegal and unlawful strike. So what this piece is saying is that if all state agencies shall have a process of determining whether they're hiring someone who was a former CO and if they participated in this illegal strike. Continuing on, all New York State agencies shall, as part of any background investigation, determine whether the individual being investigated was previously employed by docs and therefore separated from such employment in connection with such individuals' participation in the illegal and unlawful strike. So, what she's saying here is that in your background check process, you have to institute a piece that addresses the research and investigation as to whether the person came from docs and whether they took part in the illegal and unlawful strike. Continuing on, no New York State agency shall hire or appoint any individual who was previously employed by docs and therefore separated from such employment in connection with such individuals' participation in the illegal and unlawful strike. The prohibition applies to all appointments in the classified service of the state, as well as any hires in the unclassified service where civil service law provisions apply, and within 3 days of this directive, where applicable, the Office of Employee Relations, in consultation with the Department of Civil Service, shall issue guidance to all New York State agencies on how to integrate the above requirements into their hiring processes. So what this next piece is saying is that the Office of Employee Relations will work with the Department of Civil Service, and they will issue guidance to state agencies on how they can implement this barring of those correction officers who striked. Okay. Further, by virtue of the authority vested in me by Section 29A of the Executive Law, I hereby extend and continue the suspensions and modifications continued in Executive Orders 47 through 47.2, and thereby temporarily suspend or modify the following laws for the period from the date of this executive order through April 9th, 2025. Okay, so I just want to stop it there. I don't want to go over these other portions of it, but this is the executive order. The most meatiest pieces are the pieces that we went over above. So, okay, oh, we have a comment. We have a comment from R.O. Plo saying, fair enough, this wasn't about a strike for change. This was an illegal strike and one purposefully staged the same week the goon squad were charged with murdering Robert Brooks. I agree with you 1,000%. I definitely believe the optics of when the strike occurred in connection with the murder of Robert Brooks and the prosecution. Um, it's too coincidental for me because these issues that the correction officers were saying they had, this should have been happening for a period of time. So why now? Like all of a sudden they're fed up with with what's occurring inside those institutions. I don't know. So I think I agree with you. I think it's very suspect. I think it's extremely suspect. Okay. Okay. So I want to share with you one last piece. Oh, give me a second. We have another commenter. Oh, Josie Manning Taylor. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. I think you're a wonderful journalist, and I appreciate your efforts in bringing this crap to life. Oh, listen, trust me, I wish I did not have to, report on this. So for those of you who don't know, uh, the name of this channel is Critical Conversations HR. And originally, this channel was about human resources. And then something happened in December. I saw the Robert Brooks video, and this channel just took a very different turn after I saw that video. And I've dedicated my channel to exposing the injustices and the evils in the New York State correctional system, as well as other facilities nationwide. So, Josie Manning Taylor, thank you for the compliment. I really appreciate that. I'm really not a journalist. I'm just somebody talking about these issues and trying to bring forth to everybody, these articles and research that I'm finding from my end. So, I really do appreciate that. Thank you so much. Chris Milkey says, I agree. This was a distraction. I 1,000% it was a distraction. I mean, I've done multiple videos about the strike. And I hate having to do videos about the strike, but people want to know about it. For me, the strike was a big distraction. And what was truly remarkable and unfair is that the mainstream media, you know, covering the strike, very very one-sided coverage of the strike. And in terms of stories of those people who are incarcerated and the abuses, very little stories. So the strike was a big distraction, and I think people are being emotionally manipulated by these news stories, especially when they start to parade out the wives of COs and the children, with their signs. That really bothers me, but that's a whole other conversation. We got Michelle. Michelle says it was just to shift the attention off the Robert Brooks case and other circumstances on what's really going on. Again, I agree with you 1000%. 1000%. Well, we got Samantha Ortiz. Samantha Ortiz says, I think there should be cameras three out. I think there should be cameras throughout prisons, including in the prison cells, and correctional officers should keep on their body cameras at all times. I agree with you 1000%. You know, in a world we live in a state so wealthy like New York, every correctional officer should have a camera. The problem is they won't put those they won't put those cameras on, and guess what? There's no consequences. So all you correction officers out there, if you don't put your cameras on, there are no consequences because of the collective bargaining agreement with NYSCOBA. It's virtually impossible to terminate a correction officer. You have officers who have beaten and killed inmates, and they have not been fired. So, and for those of you who don't know, the correction officers involved in the Robin Brooks homicide, out of 18, 16 of them, two resigned, and the rest, technically, they're still employees of New York State docks. They're still employees. They're going through a disciplinary system, a process now. So, going back to Michelle, thank you for commenting, Michelle. Distraction. Planned distraction. Agree. Um, you got Samantha Ortiz throughout, just a correction. Yep. Okay. Oh, I see what you're saying. I think there should be cameras throughout prisons. Gotcha. Okay. Michelle, cameras on, cameras or not, they won't use it. That's the problem. That's the problem. You can have many laws in place or regulations, but these correction officers don't want their body cameras on. So I got some hate comments from some correction officers who said I was lying. They called me a liar for saying that correction officers don't want to wear body cameras. There's video evidence of this, in their rallies, in their protesting, in their strike, saying they do not want to wear body worn cameras. So that's not a lie. For those of you who want to say that's a lie, it's not. Samantha Ortiz, they should be kept on at all times uh, through a outside agency. That's a very good point. Yeah, these cameras should remain on, and it may take a third party to be able to monitor these cameras and have some kind of alert system when a camera is turned off and that officer is actively on duty. Because these officers, I don't believe that they will turn these cameras on. And part of a problem I have is that you have many correction officers who say we are being brutalized, we are being assaulted. So why wouldn't you want to have a camera on to capture that assault by that person who's incarcerated? That camera helps you just like it helps police officers. So I don't understand the logic that officers are saying that they don't want to wear them. So that's really beyond me. Variant says we citizens are under attack from every angle, in and out of prison. I'm sick of it. Yeah, I'm sick of it as well. I mean, there was actually a gentleman who had a good comment, who had a very balanced comment on one of my videos. He said, I don't believe that these officers should be beating and killing people, but I also don't believe people should be going to jail, to prison. I agree with that 1,000%. But the problem is, you have people that do end up in prison, right? And just because they're incarcerated doesn't mean that they've lost their rights, especially the right to life. So Michelle saying exactly. Samantha Ortiz, correction officers are legalized criminals. And actually, Samantha, you have some people that say, it's just a small bunch of correction officers. Like when I first started this work, I used to believe that maybe it was just a small handful of them, but it seems to be significantly more because you have a culture of corruption when beatings occur and mistreatment occurs and there's cover-ups. They all cover up for each other. They all falsify reports. They all say the same things. They get their stories together to be consistent with one another. So La Flaca says, I agree at variant. Arplo says, who are the two officers that resigned in the Robert Brooks case? Good question. So one was definitely Anthony Farina. He was the gentleman that you see on video placing his boot, his foot on Robin Brooks' genitalia. Bald-headed guy. He's one. And I believe the other individual that resigned, it might have been, oh man, you know what? I have an Excel spreadsheet. I will comment afterward. The second name of the officer, I believe it might have been Sergeant Tromley who resigned as well. So two of them resigned as of now. I believe it's Tromley and I believe it's Anthony Farina. Anthony Farina, the tall, bald-headed guy who had his foot on Robert Brooks' genitalia. He's also involved in other civil lawsuits that the New York State Attorney General is defending him and other correctional officers on, by the way. Then I will attempt to get you that information at another time. Michelle saying they are lies. Our loved ones are the ones who get mistreated and inhumane. By the way, I'm doing a live stream next week on the 28th. Some of you may have seen it. The live stream happens to be a members only live stream. But for those people who aren't a member, who aren't a critical supporter, 3 days after the video is released, the live stream, it will be made public to the. It will be made available to the general public. Basically, the live stream is going to be focusing on: is it more dangerous to be an incarcerated individual, or is it more dangerous to be a correction officer in New York State? So I'm still doing my research on that. I'm gonna have very good sources to cite for everyone on how quote unquote dangerous the job of a correction officer is in New York State. So for those of you who are around next week and you happen to be a member or critical supporter, join me tomorrow. Join me a week from tomorrow, um, March 28th, for that live stream. It's going to be very good. It's going to be very good. Samantha Ortiz says there are many correctional officers that are legalized criminals. Variant. People seem to think it's okay to have your rights violated because you're in prison, but the punishment is supposed to be loss of freedom, not loss of rights. I agree with you 1,000%. The punishment is the loss of freedom. And for any of you who've had your freedom taken away for any period of time, it is a horrible thing to lose. It's a horrible thing to lose. So thank you for that comment. Uh, La Flaca, at Michelle, yes, and they test our loved ones a lot. I have to advise my loved one, don't fall into their BS. Yeah, you have to be very careful. Be very careful. Variant, I'm fed up with all of it, Chris. I understand. I definitely understand. So, okay, what I want to do next is go into the last news piece of tonight. This article is not going to be that long. It won't be that long. But I think it's an article in reference to Attica Correctional Facility I want to share with you. So let me go ahead and bring this article up. Okay, here we go. Oh, and by the way, I'm gonna put in the chat one last time the link if you want to come on and have a conversation with me. Um, my only request is that you share your camera, you show your face, have no loud music in the background, no crazy kids. Well, I mean, at this point, all of your children should be sleeping. It's 10:38 right now. So anyway, here's the article. This article is from WKBW.com, and it is this: 9 hospitalized, including staff and inmates, after chemical exposures at Attica Correctional Facility. Attica, New York. Authorities are investigating 3 separate incidents at Attica Correctional Facility involving a chemical exposure that resulted in 9 people being hospitalized. According to the New York State Department of Corrections and Community Supervision, those who were sent to the hospital for testing included correction officers, nurses, and inmates. Sunday morning, March 16th, officials say an inmate was searched after seeming to be off. Staff allegedly found paper on the incarcerated individual. Doc says the inmate was then admitted to the facility infirmary due to his suspicious behavior. 3 correction officers who were involved in the incident reported feeling lightheaded, dizzy, and one began vomiting. All 3 were then taken to an outside hospital for testing. Hours later, on Sunday, March 16th, Doc says 2 inmates were seen by National Guardsmen laying on the ground during during their recreation time. The 2 individuals were then reportedly carried by correction officers from their recreation pens to the infirmary, where a nurse administered Narcan to both. The inmates were then taken to an outside hospital. The sergeant and the nurse involved in the incident were also taken to an outside hospital after they reported feeling nauseous and dizzy. Wednesday morning, March 19th, Doc says a staff member at Attica opened an envelope and the powder spilled out. The employee then became ill, and state police, EMTs, and hazmat were all notified. The staff member and the nurse were both taken to an outside hospital. Doc says these incidents remain under investigation. Just very quickly, I just wanted to point out for those of you who may have forgotten, part of what Governor Kathy Hochul conceded to was having a third party contractor come into facilities and handle the mail. So in this respect, this might be a good example for correction officers as to why they should not be handling mail, because people are mailing in you know illegal substances, and people are getting ill and getting injured. So let's go back to the article. Just before Wednesday's incident, the Attorney General's office cracked down on drugs making it into prisons, specifically paper. By the way, if everyone could please do me a favor real quickly, if you can just give me a thumbs up, you know, like the video, that would be greatly appreciated. It helps with the algorithm. A lot of this content is really not shared to a large audience by YouTube, just by the mere fact of what I'm covering. So any assistance that y'all could do to really help me, I'd really appreciate it. And I thank you tremendously. So let me go back to the article. Tuesday, 33-year-old Maya McIntosh of Albany pleaded guilty to charges pertaining to purposefully soaking synthetic cannabis onto paper and envelopes disguised as legal paperwork and sending them to inmates at various correctional facilities in New York from January 2023 until July 2024. It is unknown if any of those prisons are in Western New York. She faces up to 20 years in prison and maximum fines totaling more than $1 million. That is the end of that article. So let me know what you guys think about this story in Attica. And these people being hospitalized for drugs. I do think it is a good idea. I believe the striking officers didn't ask for this, having a third party, contractor deal and sort with the mail. I think they probably have the proper facilities and technology to kind of prevent some of these injuries from happening and stopping drugs from getting into these facilities. I don't know, but you know, you guys tell me what you think. Do you think the majority of drugs that get it into prison are from inmates and visits, or they're from correction officers? Who do you think traffics more drugs into correctional facilities? Let me know your thoughts. So we have Chris Milky who says I think it's BS. I'm assuming Chris, you believe that like the story is BS or it's overblown. So feel free to comment back. I'd love to hear what you have to say. Samantha Ortiz says, I believe more than a handful of correctional officers also sneak in cell phones, drugs, etc. We know that to be a fact. For those of you who don't follow, I do follow a YouTuber by the name of Conservative Felon. He has spoken and he did a great video about all of the correction officers who've been arrested, charged. I mean, not all of them, but he highlighted maybe about 10 to 15 correctional officers who have been arrested and charged with crimes. And part of what they did was smuggling in, drugs and cell phones and stuff of that nature. And they've made a pretty penny. They've made a pretty penny. BJ Webb says, I think it's made up. Okay, I think it's made up. La Flaca says officers. So La Flaca thinks that officers, bring in most of the drugs in these correctional facilities. R.O. Plo says rehabilitation for the inmates, they're not animals. Well, I'm definitely a firm believer that if you treat people as such, if you treat people like an animal, they'll behave like an animal. So you want people to treat you with respect. It's a two-way street. You know, both officers and those incarcerated have to be respected, but there has to be consequences for bad behavior. And honestly, we're not seeing that. We're not seeing that. Chris Milky says it's correction officers. Varian says COs. BJ Webb's COs, workers definitely bring stuff in often. They do not get checks at all when going in. That's a very good point. They have easy access to the facility. They don't go through a rigorous check of their body. So I can see that definitely happening. Okay. Okay, guys, we've been on for about an hour and 13 minutes. Um, I'll do one last link if anybody wants to come on and chit chat for a bit. I'm more than happy to have a conversation. If you disagree with me, my belief was that correctional officers should not be barred from employment within New York State. If you disagree, feel free to come on. Let's go. Let's go into more comments. Michelle says, "I believe that to be true, officers, in terms of bringing in drugs." Michelle again, they know how to get around the system, of course, yeah. But they're all connected to each other. They're all connected. They are all connected. So, everyone, first and foremost, I want to thank everyone who came on the live stream. I am honored and truly blessed to have you on. I do appreciate you watching and liking the videos, sharing the videos. It definitely means a lot. I appreciate you. Um, if you are not a member, you may want to consider becoming a member. With membership, with joining, you get early access to videos and live streams, and the support directly benefits the channel. So I'm truly grateful for everyone who supports the channel. I appreciate that immensely. So with excuse me, with that being said, I want to thank everyone for being on. And again, if you like the video, if you appreciate the video, like it, share it. My goal is to dig deeper than what the mainstream media is uh, telling you and sharing with you. Take care. God bless. And I will see you next time. Peace.